Sean! Does Collingwood still scare you?
No.
Brothers! What's the new movie about?
Lance Preston has a brother who goes searching for him or some dog shit.
And that's all you need to know about Grave Encounters 2.
I can only speculate what was going on behind the scenes of this film. Maybe the Vicious brothers didn't expect Grave Encounters to turn out as well as it did and decided to capitalize on it. Or maybe they were contractually obliged to make a sequel, I don't know. But it's clear from the get-go, no one gave a flying fuck about this movie. It was a paycheck and little else. The brothers did write a script for the film, but they left directorial duties to John Massacre Poliquin, a man who hadn't directed anything more advanced than music videos before.
Don't get me wrong. Not disparaging music videos. I cut my teeth editing music videos, so I can appreciate how difficult that is. And John Poliquin, he was friends with the Vicious brothers, and he went on to do many other things. He produced Stillborn, he wrote Spiral together with Colin Minahan, so I think they genuinely had good intentions in giving him the reins to this movie. I think they wanted to help their friend get his name out there by associating it with their very successful franchise. Doesn't change the fact that he had never produced a feature film before.
When writing the script for Grave Encounters, the Vicious brothers wrote an abundance of dialogue for the actors to pick and choose from in the moment, together with a bit of improv and ad-libbing to make the dialogue as natural as possible when the scenes were shot. I imagine then they had several ideas for where to go with the sequel, and they handed all of them over to Poliquin to do with what he wanted, and the result is this. Not long after Grave Encounters was released and became the phenomenon it was, an aspiring film director and movie critic uncovers clues that suggest the events of Grave Encounters may not just have been a movie, it may have all been real. So he sets out to prove it, eventually making his way inside the building, where the nightmares commences anew.
You may wonder how that makes any sense. It doesn't. Strap in!
All movies are set in fictional realities. It's nothing you need to frame for an audience to understand. But if for some reason you want to establish that a movie is only pretending to be real, how best to do that? Well, John Poliquin decided to have a bunch of critics remind us that the first movie exists.
What I'm going to talk about is Grave Encounters.
Grave Encounters?
Grave Encounters?
Grave Encounter.
Those are all real internet critics! It's what I thought, the first time I watched this movie. Because the thought of giving back to the community that brought attention to the film in the first place, by including said community in the movie, is, well, beautiful to me. But I think Poliquin may have given back to the community by not doing that.
The only important one is Alex, played by Richard Harmon, but we don't meet him yet. First, we need to establish that the mature, adult human beings we came to know and will soon appreciate from the last movie has been replaced by the banality of horror film victimhood. The subhuman creatures that only exist to be despised and disposed of. Teenagers.
Kids, get out of my movie!
Actually, seeing the sharp contrast between the last movie and this one makes me realize just how bitter most horror movie directors must be towards teenagers, even more so than Cabin in the Woods did. But that's besides the point. There's a party going on and that establishes that yes, teenagers are assholes. But where is Alex? Is he doing something more meaningful? Is he shooting a movie on location? Is he in the library researching his next film? Is he having tea at a cafe, working on his magnum opus? Nope. He's in his room, masturbating.
The first 10 minutes of the film establishes that Alex is awkward, insecure, and lonely. And he's also a self-important misanthrope with delusions of grandeur. Basically, he's everything that I think of myself when I'm at my most depressed.
But Alex is in good company. This is Dylan Playfair, who plays Trevor. He's Alex's drugged-out cameraman who speaks with lazy mouth, and because of that, I hate him. He convinces Alex to put on a dress and come down to the costume party so he can hang out with Tessa, played by Stephanie Bennett.
And then he gets plastered and starts wailing about how he's the next Stanley Kubrick and he'll reinvent horror as we know it. And here's the thing. I don't care. And I don't think you would either. So let's move on.
In the Vicious Brothers' own words, Alex is an ambitious young filmmaker who haven't found his voice yet, and the film he makes hammers that home. It's a confused mess of 80s horror tropes and awful acting I can only assume is meant to satirize classic horror. Because that's how you make the best horror movie ever made. You mock the entire genre! That's how Keenan Ivory Wayans did it. In the story we actually care about, Alex receives a video response to his review of Grave Encounters. Anyone remembers video responses? That's early days glory, YouTube. Anyway, the video shows Sean Rogerson, the actor who played Lance Prescott in what appears to be a scene cut from the movie. The account name is Death Awaits, same as was written to the doors on the asylum. The implication is lost on Alex as he messages the mysterious commenter and receives a set of coordinates. 49 by 14 degrees north, 122 by 48 degrees west. And what he finds is the building where Grave Encounters was filmed.
It is considered good form to warn one's audience of potential epilepsy triggers. This film may cause your dominant hand to violently strike your face.
And it's all the same shit they talked about. You know, built at the turn of the century, crazy doctors, lobotomy, all that shit. It's all real. It all happened.
Yeah, all the million things that prove beyond a shadow of a doubt Grave Encounters is definitely just a movie, all of that is glossed over. The fact that the hospital ran until 2011 and some buildings are still used for healthcare, glossed over. The fact that Dr. Friedkin has never existed, glossed over. The lucrative film industry that makes use of the discontinued facilities, glossed fucking over.
I wouldn't be nearly as mad about this if the entire premise of this film wasn't that the first film really did happen and they ignore publicly available facts to instead invent new facts to fit the narrative. This bullshit is why I don't do politics.
None of the actors in this film have done anything since this film release. Not a thing. Can you explain that?
Here's a list of some of the things these actors were in between movies. Also, this movie does put a stamp on it. The film took place in 2003. Shouldn't they have fallen off the face of the earth back then?
And on it goes. The film just keeps ignoring these glaring problems in the vain hope it'll all go away. It's like watching Friday the 13th Part 2, except it's more painful because I liked Grave Encounters. But you know what? I think the movie got the right idea. If I keep focusing on how bullshit this is, I'm going to explode, so I'm just going to watch in denial! Nothing bullshit is going on, it's all making perfect sense, and I am so happy to be watching this movie. So fucking happy. Where was I? Oh yeah, the mystery surrounding Grave Encounters continues to eat away at Alex, and it quickly saps his interest in his own film. There is something interesting going on here, where Alex has enough presence of mind to realize what he's doing isn't all that good. He's realized his film is very generic, and he wants to rewrite it. He wants to rewrite the entire third act. And when he gives the crew the day off, he is met by jubilant cheers, because, yeah, they don't care about this bullshit either. It's an interesting reflection of Alex's psyche, where he expects the shining from himself, but he's unable to live up to that standard. At the same time as he's displeased with himself, he's displeased with the world around him because, while everyone around him tells him he's doing great, it's also obvious none of them are all that bothered about whether or not it's good.
It's the oddest thing. People encourage him to follow his passion, but don't fawn over him for doing it, and doesn't treat him as if he's done anything special, even though he hasn't done anything special yet. Weird. Did I mention he reminds me of me as a teenager? Because he does. He reminds me of me as a teenager, and because of that, I hate him!
I just like how Poliquin conveyed that aspect of his character, and I'm grasping at straws for appreciating this film. Alex receives another message from Death Awaits, this time with a phone number to Sean Rogerson's mother, and he arranges to visit her at her house and meet Sean in person. You'd think that would be the end of it. If Sean is alive to answer questions, you'd think that would be the end of Alex's suspicions that grave encounters actually happened. But with his investigation showing everyone involved with this film are either dead or disappeared, horseshit! He does have some questions he'd like answered. So fuck his responsibilities to his crew and fuck his reputation as a director, they're going to Washington. Sean's mother Delia, played by Brenda McDonald, is very welcoming and proud that her son's fans would just seek her out like this, not at all creepily. But it quickly becomes clear that something isn't adding up. Sean's room is covered in dust and has clearly not been used for ages. And when Delia's caretaker appears, the teens are quickly chased out of the house. It turns out Delia is in the tight grip of a dementia, and any notion she has of Sean coming home are entirely delusional. It looks as if Alex's investigation has reached a dead end. But fittingly, Death Awaits comes through again.
I just need proof. I need to go back to Tacoma. I don't know, maybe check out some more articles, look up some more.
That was random.
Because the internet is haunted! Seriously, the ghosts just sent Alex a call sheet for a music video shoot in Los Angeles, set up by Heartfelt Productions. As in Jerry Hartfield. As in the executive producer for Grave Encounters. So, fuck everything even more, he's going to Los Angeles!
I just tried to talk to Jerry Hartfield. He had security kick me out. I mean, he's clearly hiding something.
Or that you're a stranger trespassing in a soundstage. I think you can do hard time for that in LA.
No, of course Hartfeld is hiding something, but luckily he's also an idiot who confronts Alex to find out what he knows. Long as he promised not to bring any cameras, Hartfeld will tell him everything. And I do mean everything.
So you admit it? The footage is real?
Yeah, every last frame of it. Except for a few cheap visual effects that we added at the last minute.
Because when you're sitting on the most horrifying movie of all time, you want it to look worse. Well, in this case, yes, there is reason for it. The story goes that, rather than being held accountable for everything that happened, Hartfeld chose to settle with the families. He paid them a certain amount of money and had them sign non-disclosure agreements. Even though he was sitting on footage that unequivocally proved he had nothing to do with what happened to the crew. Then again, this is America. When you're selling a house, you can get sued if you don't tell them it's haunted. But I suppose there is a case to be made for negligence, but that is besides the point. The point is, once the settlements were paid, Heartfelt Productions was in a hole. They were barely above water, and that's when he had an idea. Why not re-edit the footage, market it as a horror movie, and distribute it? And it worked. And as for the Vicious Brothers, there is temps, who are still working for him now. Now that's job security.
He only wanted to know if Alex had anything to back up the claims he was making, which he doesn't. Except for this video. So, does he post it online or send it to the police? Hell no, that would be irresponsible. Instead, he convinces his friends to come with him to Canada and visit the Riverview Hospital.
Guys, this is the film I want to make. Think about it, dude. It's a documentary, but it's also a horror film.
So here's the meat that's going with him. It's Trevor and Tessa, and two others I haven't bothered to mention. It's Jared, played by Howie Lai, and Jennifer, played by Leanne Lapp. Both of these characters only exist to be killed, but they do have a purpose in being here. Jared is the more professional cameraman, and Jennifer does sound capture. That alone makes them more meaningful than Tessa, who is only there to be there.
Canonically, it's because she likes Alex and wants to support him, but no, she holds no purpose whatsoever in what's to come. And no, I don't know why she likes Alex.
Road trip! They suck. They're there! Security. Apparently Riverview is private property and not open to the public. And no cameras! So they have to wait until dark to sneak inside, through the portal laden with a promise blasted upon its doors. Death awaits. And speaking of, Deaf Awaits did promise to meet them inside, and that's not suspicious at all. So they go ahead and set up a bunch of cameras everywhere, just in case history repeats itself. You never know.
Hey, is this where the black guy died?
Yeah, well, the ethnics always die first.
He didn't die first, you cunt!
Oh, and in case you didn't hate these characters already...
Oh, Trevor, you farted! That fucking reeks! Oh.
Is the thermal can picking that up?
Yeah.
Ew!
I waited 40 minutes for this!
So let's kick it off. Deaf Awaits told them to meet him in the tunnels, and as they wait, they uncover a Ouija board that has been carved into one of the tables. And, as is proper among idiots, they play it! Only for the planchette to start moving without anyone touching it. And who is moving it?
A-W-A-I-T.
Holy shit. Death Awaits, it's not a person.
Yep, the ghosts have a YouTube account, and they used it to lure them all there. Who saw that coming?
And they did so with a purpose. They called them there with a mission. One single demand. Film everything. It is a simple request. For a moment it seems to be complicated by the security guard coming across them, but he's only there to further the body count. When he investigates the sound of footsteps coming from the floor above them, he expels 3 rounds before he vanishes without a sound. The others have had enough at this point and wants to leave, but Alex is not leaving without the stupid fucking cameras they set up. So even though they all realize it's stupid, they split up to fetch the cameras.
Now, remember what I said about sequels upstaging their prequels? Everything that happens from this point onwards is note for note the same song and dance as the first film, except embellished.
What are you doing?
I actually expected that in the first movie. I was positively surprised they didn't do it because it was too obvious!
Everything that happened in Grave Encounters happens again, only amped up to be more dramatic. Walls appear where exits should be, and maps stop making sense, and creepy things starts appearing in the halls. It feels both more and less like the first movie. More things happen, and it's not as slow as the last time, but it also feels a lot more cliched because it is everything again.
Fun fact, that second shot was done with a mask with a dislocated jaw. It looks really silly. But I do think a few things were done better here. That was actually pretty harrowing. Good on them.
And that was the appetizer. As Alex, Tess and Trevor look for... I honestly don't know what they're looking for, especially with Alex very definitively stating there is no way out. They may just be keeping themselves moving. But one of the corridors is illuminated with flickering light from one of the open doors, and inside they find a security guard, strapped to a gurney in the convulsive throes of electrocution as the ECT machine has been turned into an electric chair.
Is he dead?
And wasted jump scare?
Fun fact, the man who played the security guard, Sean Tyson, is a trained stunt actor, and he really did get on the gurney and had Poliquin set him on fire for the shot. Credit where credit is due, Poliquin did stick to the precedent the Vicious Brothers set in the first film and used very little CGI for the scares. But this isn't the most impressive shot in the film, I think. Soon afterwards, they find themselves chased through the corridors by an enormous ghost, or demon, or whatever it's supposed to be. The actor who played the ghost, Roy Campsall, is a giant of a man at more than 6 feet, but that still wasn't big enough to seem inhuman. So they constructed a miniature hallway to make the actor seem genuinely towering over the characters, and I love that.
It's barely for a second of footage, but I'm still impressed they went that far. And then the kids escape. Wait, what?
yeah, they ran out the door and made their way back to the hotel to pick up their things and leave.
Shut up.
The fuck do you mean we're in the building? What do you think? I mean, it's what the building fucking does!
Oh no, they were just pulling a 1408. On that note, I don't have too much against all the new things the ghosts can do in this movie, partly because, well, like I said, it seems to be the same things from the last movie, but taken to their extreme. But if there's one thing that rubs me the wrong way, it doesn't have the same personality as before. It feels less like a malicious force slowly eking hope out of them, and more like a schoolyard bully. It's like they're trying too hard to be scary.
Alex remains unsympathetic and aims his frustration at his two cohorts, more annoyed at their presence than worried about them. There's nowhere else to go, and he leads them on through the tunnels, even as the pipes burst and fill the space with smog. I say smog because it's not steam, because they pull out the thermal camera again and it doesn't register any heat. No idea what's supposed to be in those pipes, but out of the smog manifests a nigh rabid creature. Humanoid but animalistic, half-dressed, dirty and mad. But beneath the layers of dehumanization, it is indisputably the haggard body of a man. A man who leads them to what he calls safety. A man that begins to seem familiar.
You're Lance Preston. Sean Rogerson, the actor, right?
Yep! Lance is alive. Why not? Actually, researching this movie, I learned that it is possible to recover from a lobotomy, which I did not know was a thing. I thought you were turned into a vegetable and that was it. Your family wouldn't have to come visit you anymore. But yeah, it is possible to recover, given 10 or 20 years.
We're film students. We broke into the building. Why would you do that?
Because if they didn't, there wouldn't be a movie.
But yeah, Lance, or Sean, has indeed survived for 9 years in the asylum and have gone slightly crazy in the meantime. But he's also picked up on a few things. For one, there is apparently a pattern to how the building shifts. It isn't as random as it seems, and there is a way out. Maybe. There is a freestanding red door that looks like something out of a crappy video game, and Sean has been through every door in the building except that one. Because it's chained up and he can't break them. But the crew brought bolt cutters with them, and if they can just find the bag with the bolt cutters, they can try going through the door.
Alex, this isn't Narnia.
It may as well be at this point, dude. Just go with it.
I thought you said you knew where you were going.
Just hang on a second. Please, you're racing it.
See? Told you.
It's not nearly as impressive as when he bashes a hole through a wall and comes out the ceiling of the hall. But they find bolt cutters right where they are, and then Sean announces they rest before going through the door.
And, yeah, you might not be ready for what happens next. Yep, you saw that.
Of all the things this movie has served me, the ghosts picking up the camera is the easiest one to swallow. If I had to summarize this movie in one sentence, that would be it. And it doesn't count as a CGI scare because it's not scary, it's contrived. Anyway, Trevor needs a moment to himself to contemplate the fact that he's barely into his 20s before he dies in a vain attempt to make me like his character. Before Sean kills him, steals all their shit, and then leaves them all to die.
We're never gonna get out of this building. We're gonna die in here.
And that's when Sean became my favorite character.
It's been a long time since I've been on camera. Might be a little rusty.
Don't worry about it, baby. The camera loves you.
I'm Lance Preston, and welcome to another episode of Grave Encounters.
Don't like it. Go back a bit.
Stop playing this character! I'm getting out of
There we go.
Being trapped in a haunted mental asylum with insane ghosts offers one a lot of time for introspection and realization about one's identity, and the malleability of it. Truly, the measure of sanity is how well one adapts, and the sickness is the tenacity with which one refuses to change. That's why, when Sean breaks open the chains and soars through the open doors, he remains within the asylum walls.
Bullshit! Bullshit! Broken promises! Yeah! Liar!
The writing's on the wall. Literally. The room with the mad scribbles was never used in the last film, so Poliquin makes good use of it now. In his meek, broken voice, Sean asks the scribbles what he did wrong. They said only one could leave through the red door. What do they want from him? And an invisible hand answers his questions one by one. Bring others. Collect the tapes. And most importantly, finish the film.
Yep! That's the entire point. The ghosts want another movie.
Meanwhile, Alex and Tessa make their way through the hospital, using the map Sean left behind, and find themselves in Dr. Friedkin's surgical ward, just in time to catch him performing another lobotomy. On a ghost? A stray passerby? And suddenly there is a baby that Friedkin bloodlets. Yeah, I have no idea what happened there. Then they ran away! Feel frightened! That was the point of that scene! And suddenly they're in the room with the red door.
Now let me ask you a question, hypothetically. If you were making a found footage movie, and you wanted to give it a cinematic climax, how would you do that without breaking purity? Well, if you're John Poliquin...
Alex, look at this.
It took an hour and 26 minutes, but the movie finally made me stop caring. So close.
To clarify the stakes, the ghosts want more people to enter the asylum, and they're willing to let one person go so long as they bring the footage with them, thus giving more attention to the asylum and luring more idiots inside. Sean is willing to kill Alex and Tessa to get their footage and finally be allowed to leave this place, and so him and Alex fights! I'm not gonna give you the blow-by-blow, but it ends with Sean strangling Alex, begging him to die before Tessa smacks him over the head with a pipe, and then a rift opens in the wall between life and death and sucks Sean through.
I don't even care anymore. You're gonna have to do something pretty awful to make me care at this point.
I'm sorry.
Real pain, by the way. Emotional and physical. But yeah, it turns out it's not just shitty writing that made Alex force everyone to stay in the building. He's actually completely insane and willing to sacrifice the peons he's surrounded with to make a somewhat decent horror movie. Because he sucks. The gore is very nice, but it does not take away the taste of horseshit. Look at this pin needle, he couldn't break an egg, much less a human skull. If I was Tessa, I'd just hit him back. But this is how it ends. Having killed Tessa and collected the tapes, the ghosts allow Alex to leave through the red door. He's arrested for loitering, gets in contact with Hartfeld, and then they assemble the footage and say it's a new movie, with some shitty CGI to cover up the fact that it's all real, of course. Oh, and one more thing.
Everything you've just seen is fake.
Whatever you do, don't go looking for the building. All right, don't go looking for it's not worth it. There's nothing there.
Fuck you, you rat! Your parents are uncle and niece! By which I mean the characters' parents, not the actors. Brothers? Why?
Grave Encounters 2 is a misguided attempt to make Scream. The first movie had a level of self-awareness about it in how reality became a horror movie, but this takes it to a whole nother level. It's a film critic that discovers a horror movie took place in real life and then he's made a part of it. It feels less like reality becomes a horror movie and more like a horror movie pretending it's real. It's awkward, and it doesn't feel at all like a sequel to Grave Encounters, beyond how much they keep referencing it. I just wish Poliquin had focused less on the embittered film critic and more on what the ghost's intent were, because that actually fascinated me. There is a good movie here, hidden beneath terrible direction, and if you forget it's supposed to be a sequel to Grave Encounters, it's really not that bad.
Excuse me while I braid a rope to hang myself with?
As I understood it, the plan of the asylum is to lure more people inside by spreading the myth of the asylum to other idiots who go looking for real ghosts and the like. But it's not explained why. It could be because it's maliciously insane and want to cause pain and suffering for the hell of it. But considering it's all the result of Dr. Friedkin and his black magic rituals, I suspect there is a grand plan at work. Maybe the asylum is trying to spread its influence further, maybe more souls are needed to widen the overlap between the spirit world and the physical. Maybe time travel is involved and the many thousands of patients were kidnapped and sent back to the hospital's open business days and treated like they're crazy. I don't know, but I do know that exploring the prompt to keep the movie going would have been more interesting than seeing whether this slimy asshole and his victims of circumstance would live. Further on, there are several scenes in this film that feels like Grave Encounters, and these bits were thoroughly enjoyable. I loved seeing whoever it was thrown around by invisible forces, and I loved seeing the doors exploding, and I loved the security guard being set on fire from the electric current. It didn't make any sense, but it felt like the last movie taken to its extreme, and that is indeed what I wanted to see in a sequel. I'm kind of torn on Lance, or Sean, though. I liked him as a character, especially compared to the cavalcade of cardboard that made up the rest of the cast, and he had a much more interesting backstory, but having him come back after being lobotomized was really dumb. But let's talk about the main subject of the film, Alex. I may not like the direction the movie took, but he is the hub that holds that direction together, and I would have liked to see him in a film, but not this film. Because he had the potential to be an interesting character in an interesting story. Think about it. He is a film critic that realizes he's in a movie and that knowledge twists him into a disaffected sociopath that treasures his own survival above everything. He belongs in a movie like Scream or The Cabin in the Woods or hell, maybe he could be the villain in the next scary movie, something along those lines. But he has no place here. So there are three major things that I like about this film. I like Alex for what he represents, I like the more extreme takes on scenes from the last film, and I like the grand scheme implied by the ghost's insistence the film is finished. But put them all together and direct it to constantly break suspension of disbelief with cheesy dialogue, stock characters, and fucking floating cameras, you get a mess of a film that has no business making up this franchise. I keep blaming it all on direction because the brothers didn't direct it even if they wrote it. A writer only has so much power. It's the director who decides how a film looks and how the characters act and what they do and how they're filmed and how it's edited. I wonder if maybe the brothers wrote down ideas for what the sequel should be and then left it all in Poliquin's hands to figure out what to make of it. Or if maybe they had a more concise idea Poliquin then flubbed. And that's not me saying Poliquin is a bad director, I haven't watched enough of his movies to say, but I do think he dropped the ball on this movie. Grave Encounters 2 could have been good, but wasn't. It had some cool ideas and did a few of them all right, but together it made for a tropey mash that confounded and frustrated me to no end. I wouldn't say it's an awful movie, just a very bad Grave Encounters movie. And I sentence Grave Encounters 2 to a 5 on a scale of 11.
And there was a sequel coming. Grave Encounters 3, The Beginning. But for one reason or another that never happened. And that could have been a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, from the title we can assume it would have been some kind of origin story. Maybe it would have been home movies from Lance Preston's childhood. Or Sean Rogerson. I mean, they did mention a haunted house in his childhood in the first movie. Maybe it would have been home movies from that. Or maybe it would have been documentary footage shot in the 40s to document the demonic experiments. Or maybe a team would go through archives and rediscover old documents that explain what happened back then. Or maybe recreate it for the sake of a documentary about the events of the last two movies. Or maybe it really would have been time travel. On balance, I think it's best we never found out. I mean, let's be honest here. This thing put a cap in the prospect of any more movies in this franchise. It was not gonna happen. There would be no more terrible sequels after this one. But let's not disparage terrible sequels too much. Actually, let's not disparage terrible movies too much. They might leave a sour taste in your mouth, but these movies, they do help us appreciate what came before. They help remind us what a good movie is. They make us appreciate what was.